It's my pleasure to share with you a method whereby we can optimize the formulation of materials or optimize the engineering design of implants using artificial intelligence in conjunction with genetic algorithms. First, I'd like to relate to you some of the previous projects that we were able to optimize using this method. The first of them was a bone tissue scaffold composed of an elastin-like polypeptide, or ELP, and collagen. And by varying the ratio of ELP to collagen, we were able to design the material to simultaneously have maximum stiffness, or Young's modulus of elasticity, maximum toughness, and maximum strength. The method I'm sharing today has the ability to compromise between these three design objectives in case the same formulation does not, that results in the maximum stiffness does not also result in the maximum toughness. You can have multiple design objectives and even rank the importance of those design objectives so that the AI can find you the best overall solution. In the second phase of this project, after we had optimized the ratio of the polymer components, we added bioglass to the scaffolding material and varied the amount of bioglass and the size of the bioglass particles to find together a formulation that again has the highest stiffness, toughness, and strength. Another example is the anodization of titanium implant surfaces to better repel bacteria. And the titanium dioxide that forms on the surface of titanium is normally amorphous, but by controlling the ratio of 4 acids in the bath that we conduct the anodization process in, we can control the amount of crystallinity and the ratio of various crystal phases in that oxide layer on the surface. So we were able to achieve maximum anatase and minimum rutile phase, achieve the reverse where we minimize the amount of anatase, come up with an acid bath combination that achieved an equal 50-50 ratio of the two phases, and also one that would result in the more traditional non-crystalline surface that was totally amorphous. Another example is electrospinning fibers onto a surface that will be used as a surgical membrane, like following periodontal surgery. And we created those fibers as a mixture of polylactic glycolic acid and the proteins that reside in the jelly-like membrane on the inside of eggshells, because those proteins are known to cause more rapid healing. And then we also included hydroxyapatite particles in the electrospun fibers and designed the formulation so that it would simultaneously have maximum stiffness and strength. And then a final example is the engineering or geometrical design of narrow diameter implants, which compared to normal or standard size dental implants have a higher incidence of loosening between the components or fatigue fracture. In this case, we only had one design objective, maximum fatigue resistance, measured in terms of the endurance limit, but we had a complicated design which, instead of just a few components, had 16 different measurements on the implant that could be varied to improve this endurance limit, and we succeeded in improving it by 128% over the commercially available product. However, when we begin to gather data on how the endurance limit varies as a function of, say, 2 different design parameters, even taking the 16 parameters only 2 at a time, there can be complicated interactions so that it's difficult to use a polynomial to adequately fit these response surfaces. And that's where artificial intelligence comes in. The particular form of artificial intelligence that we used in these projects are known as neural networks, and I'm using a very simple, shallow version of an artificial neural network, and it's trained in the MATLAB environment, where we also have a genetic algorithm coded to help guide the network to the best possible design. So just briefly, here's how a feed-forward artificial neural network might look. For simplicity's sake, even though I usually use 4 to 5 neurons in the hidden layer, I'm only showing 2 neurons on this slide. And instead of 16 different implant design parameters, I'm only listing 3 of them here. So using the Levenberg-Marquardt algorithm, we randomly generate some weights like W11, W21 that multiplies the numbers in these input design factors by the weight, and all of those get added to the excitation potential of each neuron. And then the neurons also have a weight for each that combines their output together to make the neural network's best guess as to what will be the endurance limit of this particular design. Well, if its best guess is 130 newtons, but we've conducted experiments and found that the true answer is 140 newtons, then we have a 10 Newton error. And the way that the neural net is trained through backpropagation of error is to split this error among the various pathways according to the amount of signal that came from each pathway. And after we get back to neuron 1, then this 6 Newton share is further split into 1 Newton, 3 Newton, and 2 Newton by tweaking the weighting factors. The first pass of training, we correct 100% of the error, and that's known as the learning ratio, starts at 100%, and we slowly decrease the learning ratio over time, like say down to 0% over 1,600 iterations of training. That keeps the neural network from getting overtrained and keeps it from only remembering the last data point that we trained it on. So once you have a neural network that's been trained to fit a complicated response surface, it can make predictions for you. If you give it a potential design, it will tell you what the height of the surface is going to be for that design. But the shallow neural network is not smart enough to suggest designs on its own. It can only evaluate a potential design that you give it. So you need some method to guide the artificial neural network to the optimum solution. A traditional method would be to use calculus with the gradient of the surface, find the path of steepest descent, and that would land you here on the top of this smaller peak. Unfortunately, the gradient methods usually get stuck at the top of the first peak they encounter, and therefore they will never find the global maximum in performance. Another possibility is the brute force search, where every edge of the design space is divided up into, say, 100 different gradations, and you ask the neural network to predict for you what is going to be the performance of every single line of intersection, point of intersection on the surface. However, this takes too much time. Even if the neural network is very fast and only needs 68 floating point operations to evaluate one design, there are so many designs to evaluate when you have 16 different design parameters that even one of the most the hypergator, one of the most rapid calculating computer clusters in the world would take longer than the current age of the universe in order to evaluate all the possible different solutions. So, so the gradient method is no good. It gets stuck. The brute force method is no good because when you have a lot of factors, it takes too long to solve the problem. One could start with randomly selecting points in the design space, but as you can see here, random selection isn't ideal because it can end up with some of the data clustered in some areas, and other areas that might contain the global maximum are totally unexplored. A more efficient method is to use a Latin square, sort of like a Sudoku puzzle, where only one of the numbers is represented by X's, one of the letters, and then this will ensure that all the initial data points that you try are evenly distributed throughout the design space. However, if you have more than 3 design factors, then you'll end up with a Latin hypercube that has so many dimensions it's not feasible to test all the X points. And at that point, you can move to a Taguchi orthogonal array, as shown here, orthogonal array with 16 different experimental factors can still be conducted in only 27 trials because it strategically varies more than one design factor at a time. And then once we start by seeding the memory of the neural network with a Taguchi orthogonal array, we need to be able to explore the solutions or data points that would be in between those initial points in the orthogonal array. And the most efficient method I've found to do this is using the genetic algorithm, where each of the design factors is encoded as 20 bits or 20 zeros and ones. So that's 20 bits per gene, and we treat each design as if it were a living organism but in a virtual environment. So if we have 16 genes, then we're going to have 16 times 20 bits for the length of the DNA of each design. And then we rely on the trained artificial neural network to be the judge of which genome is likely to result in the highest fitness or the best performance. And then we select the few parents, typically just 2 parents, that have the highest performance, and they become parents of the next generation of children genomes. And 2 may not sound like a lot, but if you have 16 genes and just 2 parents, then random crossover between their genomes can form more than 65,000 different types of children. And so we randomly cross over, say, 125 children designs in each generation. We have the chance for an occasional child receiving a point mutation that makes it jump to a different part of the design space, and this helps us to get off of those local hills and get to the peak of the tallest mountain. So we already touched on the fact that an artificial neural network is much better than polynomial at fitting complicated surfaces. The polynomial can sometimes do a fairly good job. Here we have the force is a constant plus a coefficient times the first design factor, coefficient times the second design factor, their linear interaction with each other, and a quadratic term for each design factor. And this equation is written for only 2 experimental factors, but it could be taken up to 16 or more. And your traditional design of experiment software can fit fairly well, and you get a coefficient of determination of 95%, but the artificial neural network can far outdo that fit. So after conducting this experiment, we started off testing 4 different brands of implant that were commercially available, and we took the best of those. For the narrow diameter implants, it had 116 Newton endurance limit. After training an ANN on the data and using a Latin hypercube to do an initial exploration of the design space, we had a 97% increase over the commercially available design, increase in endurance limit. Using a human to come in and interact with the artificial neural network and suggest solutions where the human thought the highest performance might be, gets an even higher endurance limit, even better design. But asking the genetic algorithm to drive the neural network towards the best possible design that it can find results in a much better design than any of the other methods, and this represents a 128% increase in endurance limit. So thank you for listening today. I'm grateful for all my students who've spent hours polishing specimens or forming solid models in software. And I'm grateful for the funding from various entities so that we could afford to collect this data. Today I've only presented a few small examples and an abbreviated version of the method, but if you would like to know more about this method, or if you would like me to tailor the neural networks and genetic algorithm to solve a problem you're working on, then please don't hesitate to contact me at the email or phone number shown here.